Ladies and gentlemen, sit back and prepare to hear a story that defies everything you thought you knew about strength, size, and the human spirit. This is not just a tale of a fight, it is a journey into the heart of a challenge that captivated a nation. In 1948, a poster made a bold declaration, and for 2 years across 19 states, the toughest, most formidable men in America lined up to disprove it. They failed, one by one, in a spectacle that drew crowds and think about that for a moment. Can you imagine the kind of fear and insecurity a challenge like this would create? To step into a ring, knowing that 312 other men have already tried and failed, each one leaving with nothing but defeat and often serious injury. The pressure would be immense. The self-doubt, the question, am I strong enough? Am I brave enough? Will I be next on that stretcher? This is the very atmosphere that Roy Branigan cultivated. He understood that the fear of failure, the promise was simple and tempting. A briefcase containing $50,000 in cash, a sum that could buy a house or secure a decade's wages for a working man. The rules were straightforward. Put any part of the man on the ground, a knee, a hand, a shoulder blade, within 60 seconds, and the money was yours. But there was a catch, one small line printed in bold letters on 10,000 posters across the land, a line that sold out auditoriums from Amarillo to Sacramento. No man has ever moved. This man, this immovable object, was Roy Branigan, a towering figure of 400 pounds, standing 6 feet 6 inches tall with a 58-inch chest. His hands could palm a basketball the way an ordinary person palms an apple. They called him the Anvil, and the name suited him perfectly. You can strike an anvil all day long with a hammer, but the anvil does not budge. It only breaks the hammer. His performance was not a fight. It was a physics lesson, a demonstration of sheer and every night before the paid challenges began, Roy ran a ritual he called warm-ups. He would pull the 3 biggest men from the audience, giving them each a free shot to his chest. Farmers, longshoremen, off-duty cops, they would all take their best swing, and he would just stand there, unmoved, looking down at them as if they were insects trying to tickle him. He was a master showman, not just a strongman. He worked the microphone like a preacher, learning your name before you entered the ring and using. Challengers came from all walks of life and all disciplines. College football linemen bounced off him as if they were birds hitting a window. Heavyweight boxers broke their own hands against his jaw. Judo masters found their techniques useless. Marine wrestlers, the toughest men in 19 states, all were reduced to the same fate. The average time before a challenge concluded was a mere 22 seconds, and those who didn't end the challenge quickly on their own often left on a stretcher. The big letter. Consider the insecurity of being a challenger. You've trained your whole life. You've beaten every opponent you've ever faced. And then you step into the ring with this mountain, and for a brief, terrifying moment, you realize your strength means nothing. You are not enough. That realization can break a man far more effectively than any punch. The audience, of course, loved it. They came to see the spectacle, to witness the impossible, and perhaps, deep down, to feel a sense of relief that it wasn't them in the ring. And then, on a Saturday night in March of 1948, everything changed. The scene was the Cow Palace in San Francisco, a venue packed with 4,000 people. The air was thick with the scent of cigarettes, popcorn, and anticipation. In row 9, an aisle seat, sat a quiet, unassuming man who weighed only 138 pounds. His name was Bruce Lee. He was 27 years old, a star of a cancelled television show, and he had come not to fight but to watch. His friend, Dan Inosanto, sat beside him, hoping the evening would remain just a spectator's outing. But Bruce Lee was not just any spectator. He was a man who had dedicated his life to the martial arts, who had spent years stripping away the unnecessary to find the essence of combat. He did not believe in the word impossible. 3 days earlier, a phone call from Dan had planted a seed. Dan had described the Anvil, the 312 men, the baseball bat broken over his shoulders. Man who braces to absorb a hit must know exactly when to brace. He is not immovable. He is early. He reads the challenger, anticipating the charge, the wind-up, the step. But what if the challenger didn't announce himself? What if, instead of trying to push over a braced building, you attacked the one wire holding its frame together? That wire, Bruce realized, was the giant's balance which lives in his head. Move the inside of him first, the brain, for that half a second, and there is no anvil. 3 nights, the lights in the basement of a kung fu school on College Street stayed on late. Bruce Lee, a man who built an entire philosophy out of efficiency, spent those nights constructing something he almost never bothered with, a plan. Night 1 was for the ears. He knew from his medical text that the ear was not just for hearing, but for balance. 2 fluid-filled chambers inside the skull tell the brain which way is down. Strike both at once, flat-palmed, with a thunderclap, and that internal level. Night 2 was for the giant's arms. He had the biggest student in the school bear hug him for 2 hours. He was not practicing escape. He was practicing how to be caught on purpose, with his arms already free and palms open. He was rehearsing the exact moment that 312 other men had tried to avoid. Night 3 was for the punch. The old Long Beach drill, the 1-inch punch. A fist, a target, a distance shorter than a matchstick. The whole body arriving behind it at once, hips floor. Breath like a door slammed by a gust of wind. Plan had 3 moves: the clap to the ears, the hook kick to the jaw, and the 1-inch punch to the chest. The total time required was about 4 seconds. The other 37 seconds of the challenge would be spent buying them, setting the stage, feeding the Anvil a false rhythm so he would lower his guard and brace at the wrong moment. Bruce Lee knew that against a man of that size, a direct confrontation was suicide. You didn't push the walls of a building to make it fall. You cut the one wire hole. The Cow Palace, San Francisco, Saturday, March 23 Adi, 1968. 4,000 pairs of eyes were glued to the ring. The Anvil had dispatched his warm-up volunteers and 3 official challengers with his usual brutal efficiency. The briefcase sat at the edge of the ring, lid open, the $50,000 glowing under the spotlight like a deer. 4,000 people had quietly reached the same conclusion. The poster was not a boast, it was a fact, and you don't fight fact. But then the Anvil picked up the microphone for last call. His promoter had whispered something in his ear, something he couldn't resist. There was a celebrity in the cheap seats. Before close the case, Roy boomed, I hear we've got Hollywood in the house tonight. The karate man from the TV show. Kato, come show the people what make-believe buys you against 460 pounds of Texas. 4,000 heads turned. The spotlight swung through the rows and found row 9, finding a small man in a black mandarin collar jacket who had come here genuinely to watch. Laughter and cheering rolled around the arena. Dan Inosanto's stomach dropped. He leaned over, his voice a tangle of Cantonese and English. Bruce, we came to watch. Bruce was quiet for exactly as long as the laughter lasted. When it died, he stood up. He did not shout back. He did not perform. He simply said 5 words. At the ring apron, there was a scale and a clipboard. The promoter weighed Bruce twice. The number refused to change. 138 pounds. The lightest challenger in the history of the Anvil Challenge until tonight had been 178 pounds. The promoter leaned in, offering a way out, a demonstration instead. Some board, some of that fancy kicking. The crowd would love it, and nobody has to get folded in half tonight. Bruce signed the waiver and handed back the pen. Don't break, Paul. Anvil was over the top rope to read the scale, grinning for the crowd. Folks, that ain't a fighter. That's the down payment on a fighter. Bruce didn't look up. He was reading the waiver, actually reading it. When he reached the bottom, he said, out of line. I'm not responsible for the poster. The promoter laughed once, then stopped because the small Chinese man was not laughing. He then took off his black jacket and folded it with a neat, unhurried precision, like a man getting ready for church, and handed it to. Think about the insecurity that must have been coursing through the crowd. Here was a man of 138 pounds, stepping into a ring with a giant who had crushed 312 others. The audience had seen the Anvil's power. They knew what was coming. They had come to see him win, to see another challenger broken. And now, they were about to witness what they thought would be the most one-sided, brutal defeat of all. Yet, there was a flicker of doubt. What if the small man, the movie star? Bruce stepped through the ropes, and for the first time all night, with the 2 of them finally standing in the same ring, the crowd saw the arithmetic. 460 against 138, a difference of 322 pounds. The Anvil's shadow reached Bruce's feet before the giant even leaned forward. Someone in the cheap seats shouted, Roy, you'll go to jail for this one. The Anvil laughed, and the crowd laughed with him, grateful for somewhere to place their tension. Bruce Lee bounced once on the balls of his feet, rolled his shoulders, and looked up, all the way up, into the grin of a man who had never fallen in his entire life. Last chance to keep your teeth, movie star, the Anvil rumbled. What are you going to do down there? Dance for me. The referee held up the stopwatch. 60 seconds. The bell rang. And then nothing happened. All night, men had charged the Anvil. That was the trap. The rules make you come to him. But Bruce Lee did not charge. He circled, light, weight forward, hands low, feet making no sound on a canvas that groaned under everyone else. The Anvil turned in place at the center of the ring like a lighthouse, arms wide, following him. The clock burned. 52 seconds. 49 seconds. The clock is my best friend, little man, the Anvil taunted. He was right, and Bruce knew it. That was the second inversion of the evening. Every other challenger had fought the giant. Bruce Lee was fighting the clock, and the clock worked for the house. 44 seconds. Bruce darted in, a low kick cracking the outside of the giant's thigh, and he was gone before the counter-swat arrived. The anvil didn't wobble, didn't feel it. 40 seconds. Same entry, same angle, same low kick. Swat gone. Up in row 9, Dan Inosanto went cold. He had trained with Bruce for years and knew he never did the same thing twice by accident. He was teaching the anvil a pattern, feeding him a rhythm to read. 34 seconds. Same angle, third time, but deeper now, committed half a step more. And Roy Branigan, 12 years of hustling, showed why he owned the briefcase. He read it. The arms closed. The cat. 26 seconds on the clock. 460 pounds of Texas wrapped around 138 pounds of Bruce Lee and lifted and squeezed. The pressure didn't build. It arrived all at once, like a car door closing on your chest. Bruce Lee's feet were off the ground, and the cow palace went so quiet you could hear the ring ropes creak. Dan Inosanto was standing on his chair with the folded jacket in both hands. But watch the film in your head one more time. Watch the arms. 312 men got caught with their arms pinned because all 312 were trying to push away. Bruce Lee got caught with his arms free. He had committed half a step deeper on purpose, arms high on purpose. He had spent 3 nights designing the inside of this exact moment. There was only one place in the ring where the anvil's feet stopped bracing and his hands stopped guarding, inside his own arms. 23 seconds. Bruce's palms flew open and came together like a thunderclap, flat, hard, on both ears at once. The eardrums were the wire that held the building together. Roy Branigan didn't scream, but he let go. Both hands went to his head, and the giant folded forward at the waist, down into a position he had never visited in a fight. The first time in 2 years, his skull was 5 feet above the canvas instead of 7. 21 seconds. Bruce Lee was already turning. The hook kick came around like the tail of a whip and cracked across the giant's jaw. Branigan never saw it. He was still holding his ear, still trying to hear. And now watch his feet. Watch that thing the poster said they would never do. They moved. A stagger. One heel lifted, slid back 3 inches. The crowd saw it and made a sound that wasn't cheering yet. It was disbelief with a volume knob. Roy Branigan straightened up, dazed, arms floating, eyes. Half a second. It doesn't sound like an opening. For Bruce Lee, it was a doorway standing wide open. He closed the 18 inches, planted his right foot between 2 size 17 boots, and set his right fist floating exactly 1 inch from the center of a 58-inch chest. 1 inch. The distance the poster promised. The fist traveled it. There are 4,000 eyewitness accounts of what the punch looked like, and they all agree it looked like a magic trick. The fist never cocked back, never swung. 460 pounds sat down on the canvas like a working man at the end of a double shift. One shot, stunned step backward, and then down, seat first, and the whole ring bounced. Then the great back followed flat, and the chains holding the poster above the ring swayed gently side to side. 19 seconds left on the clock. Any part of him except his feet. The referee looked at the promoter. The promoter looked at the briefcase. Nobody in the building breathed for 3 full seconds. Then the cow palace detonated. 4,000 people were standing on folding chairs, strangers grabbing strangers. They had just witnessed the impossible. The man who had never been moved was sitting on the canvas. The champion of the Anvil challenge was the one who had been defeated. The small man, the underdog, the one who had dared to believe in something beyond the arithmetic of brute force, had triumphed. In the middle of the ring, flat on his back under his own poster, Roy Branigan started to shake. He was laughing. Belly laughter, huge rolling, the laugh of a carnival man who had just watched the only honest trick of his life get done to him. He sat up, waved off the referee, and did the most Roy Branigan thing possible. Still sitting on the canvas, he reached through the ropes, took the microphone, and called his own defeat. "Well, folks," he boomed, "that's 313. Then he stood under. Off the microphone, with 4,000 people screaming over them, he leaned down to the small man. "The kick," he said. "I never saw the kick." Bruce replied, "You weren't supposed to." The briefcase changed hands for the first time in 313 challenges. Bruce took $50,000 and set it in the lap of the boxer with the broken hand. "Fix the hand," he said, "then find a school that teaches you why it broke." Then Bruce took his jacket back from Dan, buttoned it, and left. Not to his seat, but out, up the aisle, through the doors, into the San Francisco fog. 4,000 people were still screaming his name. He never looked at the money again. He never looked back at all. He hadn't come for the $50,000. He'd come to prove that the word impossible doesn't exist. And that is a lesson that resonates far beyond the ring. It challenges our own insecurities, our own self-imposed limitation. Roy Branigan toured for 2 more years. He never dropped the challenge, but the poster changed. It now hung from the same 2 chains in every town, and it read, "Undefeated except once," and people paid. That was the genius of the man. He had spent 12 years selling fear, and he spent the rest selling the truth. And the truth outdrew the fear 2 to 1. Night after night, town after town, the biggest man in the building told a few thousand strangers about the smallest challenger he ever faced. They say that Roy Branigan retired in 1970, his knees finally giving out, and opened a roadhouse outside Amarillo. The poster hung behind the bottles, and both halves of the Telsa bath hung beside it. Every Friday night for 24 years, if you bought the big man a beer, he told it one more time. He died in 1994. The bar kept the poster. The Cow Palace, San Francisco, March 23 Adi, 1968, 41 seconds. The night somebody. 40 years I weighed meat in this shop. I know exactly how 460 pounds hangs on a hook. It took a 138-pound man 41 seconds to teach me that the scale only tells you who's heavier, never who wins. 2 years, 312 men, and no man on God's earth could move Roy Branigan 1 inch. And the little fella from row 9, it turns out 1 inch was all he ever needed. The story of that night is a testament to the power of the human.